From the one has come the many, in the many shines of one. Of all the forms, there are not any that have not come from the one. Smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, the light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts. In the stillness of the mountains, in vast skies of brilliant blues, in ancient worlds and modern cities, that wondrous light of light shines through. Brighter than the brightest, higher than the highest, deeper than the deepest, the love within our hearts. Across this world are many people, so many creatures, great and small. We are all children of the mother. She is the one who made us all. Beauty of all beauty, yet beyond both time and space, still dwelling in each moment, bestowing on us her grace. From the one has come the many, in the many shines of one. Of all the forms, there are not any that have not come from the one. Smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, the light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts. The light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts.
Om Asato Ma Sadagamaya Tamaso Homaham Jyotirgamaya Mrityormam Amritaham Gamaya Avir Maedhi Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukha Te Namaham Pahinityam. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. And reach us through and through ourselves. And evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. My subject this morning is freedom is non-attachment. We have, as it were, two selves, a higher and a lower. the impersonal and the personal. Swami Vivekananda refers to it as the real and the apparent man. The apparent man is identified with the flesh and blood body and the mind, and considers himself to be the knower, the enjoyer, and the doer of action. The real man is identified with the universal spirit, and who abides as the witness of the natural person and the workings of the law of karma, which lay down samskaras and attachments in our psyche. Now let me illustrate this with an account from the Indian scriptures, the Puranas. We may visualize the sage Veda Vyasa. He's 1,000 years old. He has a long white beard, and he's sitting alone in meditation under a banyan tree on the banks of the river Narmada. Now, north of that river, there's a famous holy place called Vrindavan, the birthplace of Sri Krishna. And so devotees come from all over India to visit that holy place. And on this very day, there was a whole group of cowherd girls who they were on pilgrimage. And they were all coming together, and they had their baskets filled with milk and curd and sweets and payesh. And they were wending their way north until they came to that river, which was, during the rainy season, now in full spate. And there's no bridge, and there was no ferry boat. What could they do? They found themselves in difficulty. And then they looked over, and who did they see? There they saw the sage Vyasa. Oh, maybe he can help us. They went over and they prostrated before him, and they told him, "Sir, we can't cross over this river. We're on our way to pilgrimage." "Oh," says the sage. He's looking at their baskets. He says, "What have you got in those baskets?" Oh, they opened their baskets. They all of the sweets and the goodies. He said, "I'm very hungry." "Oh, well, sir, please have something to eat." And so he ate one, and he ate more, and he ate more and more, till there was only a very little bit left. And then he was satisfied. And he washed his hands. He stood up, closed his eyes, and he said, "O river Narmada, if I have eaten nothing, then let your waters part." And lo and behold, the waters of the river parted like the Red Sea. And those Gopi girls, they were so happy to see that. They just ran through that opening, continued on their journey by the blessings of the sage. Well, Vyasa was a jnani. Vyasa was an enlightened master. He had attained to moksha, mukti, that means freedom. That's our subject. He had attained to freedom. He had realized that is, he knew that he was, in his true nature, he was all-pervading like space. And he was untouched by any activities here in the relative dualistic world. And he had the discrimination that he could abide in his true nature, and that he could see the difference between the higher and the lower, and thus he was not caught up in the natural attachments to the world that proceed from the workings of the law of karma. Now, our subject is freedom is non-attachment. Let's look a little bit closer at this word, attachment. It's religious language. And, of course, in common parlance, we think of the word attachment. That is, we say attachment, we think, well, a wife is attached to her husband. That means, well, she loves her husband. And, yeah, that means it's very important for us to love others, to connect with others, to bond with others, and to become, in many ways, necessarily and naturally dependent on others, and to get comfort from another. But sometimes time passes and things change. And it may be a fact in this example, it may be that what was once, the things changed. And there was once a loving, a caring relationship, now becomes abusive. And the poor wife is beaten and tortured. And what was once a bond has now become a bondage. And it so happens that one day, people hear about her sorry plight, and maybe she's invited on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she tells her sad story. And Oprah, after hearing all of this accounting of all the details, she asks the woman, he says, that's terrible. He says, why don't you leave him? And the answer is, because I love him. That's the answer. Now, yogis may be listening to that program, would immediately recognize that it's not love. This doesn't sound like love to me. This sounds more like entanglement, more like enmeshment and bondage than a healthy bonding. It's more like not healthy dependence, it's codependence. And in such a condition, one or another in that relationship loses their freedom, loses their independence, loses their dignity. And this is attachment. This is the way that the yogis use this word, attachment. That is, it has negative connotations in our study here of our condition and of the law of karma. Now, attachment causes suffering. Or it is a condition of suffering. And that creates difficulties for us because this world in which we live is a very sticky place. And it's very easy to become attached. Once there was a bee, and she was flying around, and she saw some bright red hibiscus flowers, went over there, drank a little nectar from that red flower, flew around, saw a yellow flower, ordered a little tiny bit of nectar from that flower. Then out of the corner of her eye, she's working so hard now, she sees over out of the corner of her eye, there's a picnic table. Somebody's left out a jar of, there's a honey pot right there on the table. Looks over there, she flies over there. Lands around, nobody around, flies down, lands on the rim of that jar. Already she's beginning to smell the fragrance of the honey. Puts her little hands down. Well, she has what, 4 legs? She has two arms. Put her hand down, gets a little taste of that honey. No, gets sticky, tries to brush it off with the other hand. It's already stuck. So brushes off with one leg, trips, falls into the honey pot. Now what is her condition? She's trapped. She's in difficulty. She's become attached. This yogi is talking about attachment. So attachment means like that, this world is like, Sri Ramakrishna says, this world is like a bramble bush. No sooner have you trying to get through a whole patch there of the bramble bushes, no sooner have you extricated yourself from one set of thorns than you find yourself entangled in another. And so whichever way you turn, you're caught up in difficulties. That's the nature of this world. This world is like a briar patch. And you know how those old Uncle Remus stories goes. One day, Brer Rabbit's happily walking down the road, and the sun is shining, and the birds are singing, and he sings, "Zippity-doo-dah, it's a beautiful day." He doesn't see that his arch enemies there, Brer Fox and Brother Bear, hiding in the bushes. They have a little surprise. They've set up a tar baby there in the briar patch, which runs right alongside the road. And Brer Rabbit's walking along the road. He's so happy, in a good mood. He looks over there. "Oh, hello, good morning, sir," he says to the tar baby. And no answer. And then he stops and he says, "I said, good morning, sir." No answer. And then he thought, what is this? As he turned around, he walked around, and he walked into the briar patch. And he said, "Sir," I said, "hello, good morning" to you twice. It's polite to give me some reply. Here, at least let's shake hands. He reached out, and he took the hand of that tar baby. And what did he do? Then soon he found he was stuck. Pretty soon he was stuck, his hands all over his shirt. And it wasn't long before he was all caught up. And Brer Fox and Brother Bear, they were rolling on the ground with laughter to see his predicament. Caught up. Our condition. This is our condition, human condition. The world is a sticky place. Even if you're a philosopher, even if you avoid all the so-called material things of the world, you withdraw into your mind and you live in the world of pure thought. Maybe you're a philosopher who's like a spider, spins a web, sparkling web of ideas, all interconnected and shimmering in the sunlight, you see. But that's it. That's like the philosopher is like the fly. He gets caught in the web of words, and he's struggling. And there, maybe he dies. And so that's what all about attachments and about how difficult it is to go through this world. Now, We're talking here about karma, our own self-conscious volitional actions that are the cause of all this. Well, we may ask this question, where does all this attachment comes from? Where does it come from? Well, it's very well analyzed by the yoga psychologists into what in the Yoga Sutras are called the 5 kleshas. That is, all this began with avidya, that is spiritual ignorance. And as a result of this spiritual ignorance and unknowingness, forgetting our true nature, because we have forgotten our true nature, we don't know who we are, and therefore we identify with the thing which is closest to our eyes and ears and our touch. That's our own body. And we think that we are the body. And we think that we're the thoughts about the body, and thus there appears the second of the 5 kleshas, the ego. Avidyasvita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. The second appearance, the ego. Now we're asking, where does this attach? Now already, the attachment means we're identified with the ego. That is adhyasa. We discussed this on other occasions. Superimposition has taken place. We've taken ourselves to be that which we're not. And thus we're already trapped. We're already attached. But the story doesn't end there, because the ego is a fountain of desire. And it goes out. You see, once you have avidya and the ego, that's the center. If you just visualize concentric circles, just like you throw a little pebble in the pond, concentric circles go out. Similar it is. That's adhyasa. We identify with larger and larger, more and more externalized forms. And so the ego is the fount of desire. The root is avidya. We desire what? We desire what to get things that we want. We desire to get rid of things that we don't want. And we desire to keep the things that we love and enjoy. These are called the 5 kleshas. These are called the pain-bearing obstructions. That's how the yogis analyze this. And we could call these last 3, we could describe them as 3 graspings. That is, the graspings are the gestures of the ego mind. What are those 3 gestures? Grasping, pushing away, and clinging. This is our bondage. And, our subject, what is freedom, is non-attachment. Non-attachment. But let's look more, we're trying to look here at our condition. Let's look first here at this idea of grasping. Let's say that you're walking one day near to our San Diego Vedanta Society. Maybe you go for a walk, and there you'll be walking through the Spanish Village. It's a little art colony. And you're walking along, and there you stop and you see all the paintings are all local artists. Or you stop there and you see a particular seascape. It just captures your attention. And you just stop there, wow, that's a beautiful painting. You're admiring it with a kind of like a step back and from different angles. You're like an artist or art critic. Yeah, that's a nice painting. And then you go on your way. You go on through the village, you get home. Maybe an hour later after you're sitting there in your living room, you're looking around your living room and you look at the wall. There's nothing on the wall. And you're thinking, that needs a picture. Now I wonder, needs a picture. See, this is the way the mind works. Dhyato vijayan pungsa sangasteshu bhajayate. You think about a sense object, then you will become attached to a sense object, and a desire will arise in your mind to possess that object. And in fact, what happens? Well, you finally convince yourself, yeah, it's a good idea. The next day you go back and you buy the picture, and now you possess it. Now you own it. You bring it back and you put it on the wall, and you're happy for some period of time. Short while you're happy anyhow, giving you some satisfaction. Now you may say, well, what's wrong with that? Isn't that how we live our lives? Yeah, but see, let's look at the way the yogis look at it. The yogis look at that and they say, yeah, well, what's the problem? The problem began when you began to, it's all right up to the point where you're contemplating that picture as an art critic with detachment, that which disinterest, that's aesthetic. But then you let it go to the next point. That is, you let it go to attachment and desire. And the desire with the desire. What's wrong with desire? Well, desire is very bad. Desire is what is desire? It's a feeling of lack, of want, of neediness, of emptiness. That's what it is. That's why we don't like it. We want to get rid of it. So what do? Whatever we can do to satisfy desire, it'll go away now. And we satisfied desire. Well, of course, you know how that story goes. According to the yoga psychologists, once you satisfy your desire, then next thing you know, you've left a samskara in the mind. And the samskara is just a unit of energy that's working there in the mind. It'll attract others, form a habit. Pretty soon that will become habitual. You satisfy a desire, as they say, you're pouring the ghee onto the fire burns brighter. And not only do you compound your problem by strengthening that gratification, principle of gratification, but the yogis know that one fire lights another. Desire is like fire. One fire lights another. And one thing will lead to another. And so that's you're asking, well, what's wrong with it? I'm saying, what's wrong with it? What's the problem is the question. Okay, the problem is now that one fire lights another. Sri Ramakrishna tells about the once there was a spiritual aspirant. Well, he was going to renounce the world and become a Swami, become a sannyasin. And so where he was, right on the banks of the river Ganges, his guru was there. Yes, he says, I will take these vows this very day. And so the guru initiated him into sannyas, and there he was. Good. You're in a very good place here. Stay here by the river Ganges. You can take your bath in the morning. You go there in the village. You beg food during like that. You come back and do your worship service. So saying, the guru left. He said, I'll come around this way again, maybe a year. You do your spiritual practice. Well, the very next day, that monk, he was a world-renouncing monk, so all he had was 2 loincloths. That's all he owned. He'd wear one, and the other he would wash, and he'd put out to dry on a bush. So the next day, he was washing there in the river Ganges. He came out. What did he see? That is, the second loin drying on the bush. It had all been nibbled away by rats. And he thought, what, this is terrible. I can't. At least I don't have anything else. I have to get a cat. He thought, that's reasonable. So the very next day he went in on his begging. One day, come to the house of the devotee. Could you please give me a little tiny clay cup of milk? You know, I have a cat. So he took that milk. He brought it back. He put the milk down, and sure enough, now he put that milk down. A cat started coming. Now he had a cat. Problem solved. Until, that cat, the devotees, one day, after 2 or 3 days, devotees say, enough on the milk. We can't spare any more milk. He said, why don't you get a cow? And he thought, there's plenty of sacred cows walking around. He'd go, so he thought, a good idea. So now I solved that problem. We go and got a cow. He tied her up there by the tree, and the cow ate the grass, gave the milk, gave it to the cat. Everything was fine, but pretty soon the cow had eaten all the grass under the tree. And now he was begging from the poor householders. He wanted a handful of hay. After a while, they said, no more hay. Why don't you grow your own field there near you? Plant some hay there and it'll grow. Get somebody to help you, which he did. He went and planted all this stuff. Sure enough, it began to grow little by little. And he got a few friends, hired 1 or 2 people to come and help him. Yeah, we'll have a good harvest. And sure enough, they got all that hay. And more than enough for the cow. They sold that. He thought, very good. These workmen, they need a bunkhouse, place to stay. We all need to stay, somebody to do the accounts. We need a house. You need to have a wife. And so like that, one thing led to the next. One fire lights another. It seemed very reasonable. He didn't do anything unreasonable. But here he is one day, finally a year passed. The guru is coming back that way, the banks of the river. Wasn't this where I left this guy here? No, he asked around, wasn't there a sannyasin here? Yeah, he lives in that big manor house up on the hill. And so the guru goes up there slowly, can't believe it. He goes up there and he knocks on the door. The door opens, and there's the man. And as soon as he sees that, his spiritual teacher, suddenly his whole progression comes flooding back into his mind as he realizes how far a distance he is from where he was left a year ago. And he was so embarrassed, and he fell down. Sir, please forgive me. I don't know what happened. It was all for the sake of a loincloth. That's the way it is. And that's our whole life. We justify, it's all very reasonable. It's all very justified. Grasping. Once you grasp hold of one thing, then that's the habit, that's the samskara. Now let's look at the second gesture. These are gestures of the ego mind. Aversion. Grasping, aversion, that is pushing away. It's exactly the same thing when you analyze it, because it's the same movement of karma. It's a self-conscious volitional action. We're acting there with attachment of the ego mind. It leaves a samskara, an impression in the mind. So the same psychology, the same impression, the same bundling of impressions that form the habits and the tendencies that make up our whole psyche. In fact, we're like that. We're like magnets. Either positive, negative. That's just what we are. Likes, dislikes. That's the whole psychology. The carrot and the stick. That's all you have to do to explain psychology. You follow the pleasure principle, or you avoid pain and suffering. So this is the second gesture here. Avoidance. Avoidance means, of course, in a deeper analysis, we avoid what? We avoid pain, something that's painful, something that's unpleasant, something that we dislike, something that we fear, something that makes us feel anxious and fearful, something that makes us angry. all the negative emotions now come into play when we can't get what we want, or when something happens which we don't want, then there's that gesture of pushing away, avoidance. Raga, dvesha, these are Sanskrit words. That just means aversion. It's the same as desire. We always talk about desire, but aversion is the same. It functions in just the same ways. Once there was a monk of this. He was in one of in the order of the Thai forest tradition. Later he became an Ajahn, like a Swami. But he tells this account of this monk who lived there in they call him a wat. That means like a big temple right in the middle of the city. But adjacent to the temple is a monastery. So these monks are living in this monastery. And every day this young monk would go out and he would sit on the veranda of the temple to meditate. And there he would sit down and he would focus his mind, and suddenly then he would hear, then he would begin to hear the traffic and the motorcycles and the buses, and the noise, the hubbub of the city, and the hustle and the bustle, and the music. Loudspeakers go on, turn on, and here in his mind he's trying to avoid this, push all this away, ignore all this. He wants to meditate, fighting back and forth. Of course, as psychologists say, whatever you resist persists, right? It gets stronger. That's because resistance is giving attention. Attention is the energy. You give it energy, and so it comes back stronger. And so you push and push. You're in a wrestling match with this disturbance. It's disturbing your mind. You want to avoid it. That's avoidance. Well, he didn't know what to do, so he went to the abbot of the monastery. Told the abbot, he says, I hear this word, this music and all this noise while I can't meditate. It's disturbing my mind. And the Ajahn, he looked at him there. He says, it's not the noise that's disturbing your mind. It's your mind that's disturbing the noise. And what? He says, that sounds like a Zen koan almost. It's your mind that's disturbing the noise. No, what does that mean? Of course, that just means, according to yoga psychology, the problem is not outside. The problem was in you. Somehow within you is the problem. And you may say, well, what can I do, though? It's just, I can't just block out the noise. I can't just turn off my senses. I react that way because that is, it's a knee-jerk reaction. I can't not hear it. I can't, why? Because that's the way I'm wired. And it's true. That's the reason why you can't block out this noise. However much you will to do it, because you're wired, your psyche is wired to say whatever neurons fire together, they wire together, right? That means your whole psyche is wired to act. Likes and dislikes. You can't just override them easily. What to do? Well, you think, okay, why don't you just maybe you say the serenity prayer. Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. Courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. And that's a beautiful prayer. And that's what we want, the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change. How do we get that serenity? Well, that's why we're here. That's the whole point of spiritual practice. That's the whole point of the whole Vedanta. Somehow to get the serenity to accept those things which we cannot change, that disturb our meditations. Let's look here at the third gesture of the psyche. It's called abhinivesha. That means clinging to life. Clinging on, holding on to something that we dearly love, that we need. We're identified with it. We identify with it. We don't want to let it go. Once there was a seagull. These are all parables of Sri Ramakrishna. There was once a seagull flying around on the seashore. He was so happy. Jonathan Livingston's seagull, maybe he was. He was looking down there, and he said, what did he see? He said, he sees there that there's an open-air fish market. And there's some fish lying right out there and open, and he's flying around and around. And he swoops down and grabs a fish in his beak and flies up. All the fishermen came out there shaking their fists, crying out. No, he got up, flew up in the air. He looks down, he sees these other poor seagulls. They're on the beach. They're pecking. You get a little crumb of this, a little crumb of that. He pities them, you see, but he has this fish now in his beak. How much he's going to enjoy it. He flies up in the sky, but then he sees out of the corner of his eye, what does he see? Another gull coming up this way. And he looks out, he sees out of his other eye, another one. And then he hears, caw, crack, caw. A whole gang of other seagulls. They've left the beach. They all see that fish, and they're all in pursuit of him. And he flies to the right, and he flies to the left. And he can't get rid of them. And they come clumbing, and they peck at his wings and peck at his tail feathers. He's all bloody and everything. Finally, it's all because of this fish. I don't want to, but I'm going to let go. So he lets go. Fish falls down. All the gulls pursue the fish. Yes, he's left free. Freedom is not attachment. As he let go, he's able to let go of that which he's clinging to. They call this clinging to life. That means clinging to life itself. It may not be any particular thing, but once there was two Buddhist monks. All of our stories here are Buddhist. No, not all of them. Here's some. They are returning home to the monastery. One is the guru and the disciple. And it's during the rainy season. The rains have stopped, everything's kind of muddy. They're walking along, and they come to a stream. And there again, like the river Narmada, it's a swift-flowing stream. What are they seeing now? The young monk looks over there. He sees that there is a Japanese girl in a red kimono who's just dipping her little toe into this swiftly. She can't. She's afraid. She has to cross over this river. How it can? Well, his Tenzan is the guru. Aikido is the disciple. Aikido, as soon as he sees that, he just turns his head the other way. Because you're a good monk, you're not supposed to look at the form of a woman. But then what does he see? He sees his own guru, that is Tenzan, has walked over. He says, hello, girl. He said, what seems to be the problem? Oh, I can't cry. Oh, he scoops her up in his arms. He wades across the stream, puts her down on the other side. Oh, thank you so much, sir. Meanwhile, Aikido has waded across the stream. He can't believe what he's seen. He's shocked and stunned, and his mind is all in turmoil. And then he continues on. The two monks continue on towards the monastery. But the disciple, his mind is whole of his model of the way a holy man. He broke all the rules. Finally, he just couldn't contain himself anymore. He said, "Sir, I'm sorry, I have to blurt out like this, but you did very wrong up there. How could you do that?" See, Tanzan was a Mazan master. He lived outside the box. And so that was his behavior. But he heard what the disciple, "How could you have done that, sir?" And then he looked at the disciple, he said, "That girl, yeah, I put her down back there. Are you still carrying her?" So like that, the disciple then realized, same thing, yeah. See, it's all it's attachment. It's attachment. The Zen master, Sri Swami Vedarupananda says, that man alone will get the best out of life who, having the power to attach himself fully to the work at hand, reserves also to himself the power to detach when he should do so. So that's the Zen master. He had the power, and so he was not entangled. So this is about non-attachment. That's what we want. Freedom is non-attachment. Bondage is attachment. Attachment is adhyasa, that means superimposition. That means identifying with that which we are not. And all of the yogas teach this non-attachment as a prerequisite, or like a preliminary, basic core practice. Jnana yoga, it's called vairagya. Same Sanskrit word there. Vairagya just means non-attachment. Willingness to let go. Willingness to get rid of those things which are dragging our mind down and which are obstacles on our spiritual path and which do not serve us. We have to be willing to let go of those things, to renounce them. And in the Raja Yoga, of course, those are the very first principles of Raja Yoga, the yama. Yama niyama, himsa, satyasteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. That means non-grasping. Non-grasping. That's a preliminary for you to, you can't be successful in the practice of meditation, that is in Raja Yoga, unless you have established in non-grasping, among other things. So that's just a preliminary. Non-grasping, of course, means non-avoidance. Attraction, not aversion, not clinging to life. This is our ideal. Our ideal is freedom. In Sanskrit, it's called moksha. Moksha is a good word to go into our vocabulary because it means not just freedom, which is a good old Anglo-Saxon word, but this just means spiritual freedom, particularly spiritual freedom. And it's true of all the yogas. So if you ask what's the purpose of Raja, Bhakti Yoga and all that, you can always give the same word, moksha, freedom. The Yoga Sutras, this is freedom from what? Freedom from these 5 kleshas. That is from spiritual ignorance, from the ego. So that covers pretty much all the yogas right there. Freedom from grasping, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. And that's the freedom that is the purpose of our spiritual life. That is the freedom to connect with others, which is natural. Natural for us to connect with others, to bond with others, to love others, to be supported by others. But at the same time, reserving to ourselves the ability, at a moment's notice, you put your whole mind and consciousness on a single point of love. But you're able to, at a moment's notice, to withdraw your mind and to remain as the serene witness of the contents of consciousness. This is the freedom of non-attachment.
My thoughts run here and then go there to remember joys and sorrows lived and shared. So many waves of thought and care as I journey from here to there. Then I find myself on a mountain high with light so pure and a big blue sky. And my spirit reaches out to fly as I hear the eagle cry. Then I soar beyond life's ocean's waves to a blissful sea and a crystal cave, to that silent peace of a mountain's heart, to that same place in my heart. And in this silence deep within this sacred place, this precious gem, my mind and heart fly to release, and I feel the sweetest peace, the sweetest peace.
Tomorrow evening, 5 p.m., guest speaker Swami Vedarupananda. His subject is the light of lights. And the subject next Sunday is Hinduism for Dummies. And Swami Vedarupananda will speak. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksha Ham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apa Shanti O Shadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Saravam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sa Me Shantiredhi Om Shanti 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 Om. Peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.